Welcome to the lab. My name's Corey, and this week we're gonna build some pillars. Gonna be honest, I didn't even think about doing something like this until I had built the walls for the graveyard last time, and I put them all together, and I realized, they don't look like they quite fit together. So I decided to put some pillars between them, simply to make it look like it's more cohesive, like it's one piece when you put it all together. But I'm still keeping them separate and modular. There's not too much more to say about this. I think what I'm going to do is I have two more projects that are a little bit more complicated than some simple things like this that I'm going to be knocking out in the next month or so for the graveyard. And then once the graveyard set is complete, I'll display the whole thing and I'll talk about my journey through building the whole thing, because there's not really much of a journey to build something as simple as this. So unfortunately I don't have too much of an exciting story to share, but sometimes that's okay. You know, projects go the way you want them to do. I knocked these out in a day. I've had a lot of family and work keeping me busy, so I needed something simple to do. So I've been knocking this graveyard set out piece by piece, but I think I have some free time coming up, kind of. At least it's not going to be as busy. So next I'm going to build a gate, and then we're going to do a mausoleum and make it look like it can fit inside or outside, maybe bust down the wall or something. Without too much further ado, let's get into how I made these pillars. Alright, so the first thing that I did was I lined up my foam core to about an inch mark, and then used a finger guide to roughly draw an inch. It didn't have to be exact. And then I cut it. Just showing you how I did it a couple times so you can see that I gripped the pen really solidly and left one of my fingers back and held my hand into a tight position so I could let it guide itself along where the pen should be for roughly 1 inch. And then I just used the grid of my cutting board to cut 1-inch squares. These are going to be what the pillars are made out of. You can see here where I notch the grooves, or notch in some grooves to make it about a little less than a third of the way in on every side, and then hot glue them together, stacking them up, flip-flopping the squares back and forth so that the grooves alternate sides. And when they're all stacked up, it looks like, ta-da! Pillar made out of some bricks. It's a pretty easy thing to do when you've just got some foam core, a little aluminum foil, add some stone texture. Doesn't take much material. You can buy pretty much everything used here besides the knife at the dollar store. And then for the knife you just need anything that can cut foam. Then I took my box of nuts and bolts so that I could weight these guys down so they wouldn't just be blown all over the table anytime somebody sneezes. And I mashed the bolt into the bottom so that I can see its rough outline. And then, as you can see here, I'm just using a couple of cheap carving tools to carve out the area, put a bit of hot glue in there, push the bolt in. This particular pillar split as I pushed it in, which wasn't a big deal. All I had to do was push it back together. That's just me clearing up some of the hot glue that seeped through the edge. This only happened on one, so as long as you do a little bit of extra carving, you're fine. Then I got out my Mod Podge, and I'm a dummy and forgot to film it, so I'm just going to tell you, hey, I covered them in black Mod Podge. Wow, so surprising. There they are. Took actually a long time for them to dry. Doesn't normally take, it took about like an hour to get them fully dry. Maybe it was just because I soaked them so much. Anyways, I took a dark / deep gray, I can't remember the name of it. Base coated everything in that. This is the same procedure that I've used on everything else to paint stone. It's a solid recipe. That's the word I was looking for. It's a solid recipe to make stuff look like stone. I didn't bother painting the bottoms. I can, if I ever want to put these things sideways, take a couple seconds and paint the bottoms, but I just wanted them to be able to sit up and dry and get them finished for the table so that I can move on to the next project. I'm actually really excited to move forward with this. Next step was just to do a normal gray. Heavy dry brushing brings out all that texture. You can see there how I'm pressing pretty hard on some of this. Yeah, you wipe off most of the paint so that there's not a lot left behind, but yeah. Then you do a light dry brushing of an off-white. I use vanilla. Really, what this really does is make it look like the stone has been chipped or worn in certain areas. The lighter parts are where you normally would see a rock split or cracked open, like the dust, the sand from the stone. Then I just put on a heavy wash, make sure to get it in all the crevices. This one I particularly put a little bit too much wash on. You see it dripping off there. I was a little more careful on the rest, but yeah. And then after that, I went back over with a bit of vanilla to bring back out, like I said, the cracks and where it would be worn down over time, including the top. Sometimes if you have too much of a flat surface, you can kind of just dab the bristles of the brush on the top and it'll make its own pock marks, or it will at least look like that after you've done the shadow. And then here I am just lining it up. You can see the pillars themselves actually added in a bit of space to make the graveyard larger, and I was actually able to fit all the grave sites I made into it. And now I know how big to make the gate. So. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look on how I put these things together. Definitely glad I made these. They tie the set together a lot better than just having the gates sitting next to each other and cut off with nothing there. Hope you don't mind that I kept this video short, simple, and sweet. If you have any other ideas of what I can add to this graveyard terrain, or if you have anything spooky you'd like me to make, please leave a comment below, and I'll probably add it to my list of things to make. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe if you want to see more. And until next time, experiment with your hobby.